You're listening to the Fact Hunter Radio Network.
What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. As we record, it's 8:30 on the nose here on March the 8th, 2023. I hope everybody's doing well. We have a very special guest this evening. Please help me welcome from the Thinking Logically podcast. Please help me welcome Joe. Joe, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great, George. How are you?
Doing really good. Thanks for joining me. And go ahead and let the audience know a little bit about yourself and your journey to the truth.
So I am Joe. I run a small-time podcast called Thinking Logically. I've always, I guess, been what you would call a conspiracy theorist, but I really got into it in early 2020. So long story short, in very late 2018, I was involved in a car accident. Someone rear-ended me. My L5 moved in front of my S1 or vice versa, and I had to have my back fused about a year later. Long behold, after my back fusion, they went into like my stomach and my back. I was just laying in bed, not able to do anything. And then the COVID pandemic hit literally a few days later. So that I had nothing better to do than just sit on my phone and go on Twitter and Reddit and all these places and look up all these crazy, crazy things. And I found like the things I believed my entire life or thought my entire life, actually a lot of other people believed and thought alike. So it just honestly it took off from there. But where I'm from a part of Western Pennsylvania that is very interesting if you follow the news cycle in 2023. So I live about 10 miles, I'd say, as the crow flies, I think is the term, from East Palestine, Ohio. My house is about a mile outside of that giant circle that they called an evacuation area or whatever. I don't know how they knew exactly where everything was going to blow, but I did get an alert on my phone, and I have a wife and a 6-month-old son at the time. So it did make me a little bit nervous, and we've been following that situation ever since the train derailed. At the same time, if you're a football fan, I live about a half hour away from where Damar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bills defensive back that collapsed on the field and had a heart attack and had to be revived, I live about a half hour away from where he grew up and played high school football. My co-host, who I'll get into later, doesn't even know I'm coming on here. So my co-host, he actually has met him on numerous occasions. He's
Really?
Yes, he's an NFL, or not an NFL. He's a Division II college official and does high school football as well. And he's met him and talked to him on numerous occasions. So it's crazy that we actually are familiar with Damar Hamlin before this. He was also, speaking of Damar Hamlin, a good friend of mine. Actually just saw him about 2 weeks ago at a Pitt Panther basketball game. And Damar was kind enough to take a picture with his son. And all I can say about that situation, because it's very weird, it is very strange, but the tattoos are real. I see people online that say about the tattoos, the tattoos are real. So whether it's really him, whether he has serious medical issues, I can't say for sure, but I just know that the tattoos were real. That's
okay.
all. So at the same time, I live about 40 minutes outside of the city of Pittsburgh, which puts me about 50 minutes from John Fetterman's front door when he was mayor of Braddock.
Oh, boy.
I mean, I've known this dude since he's always been as crooked as he come. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but 10 years ago, I believe it was, he was the mayor of Braddock. Number one, he vandalized a bar's sign by showing up there at like 2 a.m. and taking their letters and spelling out, I forget what he spelled out on there. And the police just let him go on that, never faced any charges. And then he pulled a shotgun on, not that I care about race or anything, but a black jogger. And that just got totally swept under the rug because the police just didn't want to pursue it. So he's always been dirty. He's just at least had some form of a brain. Now, question whether he does or not.
Well, can I ask you a question about that? Does he come from a prominent family?
Sure.
Is he from a wealthy family? Because normally that's the type of people who get away with these type of things.
So I don't know exactly how much money they have, but he basically he bought, I think, his house off his parents for $1. So what does that tell you?
Gotcha.
Yeah. But our podcast really nailed that whole situation back in the summer when he first had the stroke. And then when his doctor, we found out that actually his doctor that cleared him in the summer, I think it was fall by then, was actually a donor of his, Dr. Clifford Chen. So I've been trying to find that doctor on the streets, to ambush him and just ask him simple questions, like, where did you get your medical license? Cooking school. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Now, back to my co-host, he has no idea I'm coming on this because it's simply the name Flat Earth. It really just turns people off. Like, if this was called like the fake moon landing files, he might even want to join me. But it's just the Flat Earth. You cover this in detail, but the Flat Earth Society is what ruined this.
Yep.
So they're probably controlled opposition, as you know.
Absolutely.
You see this giant flying disc in the air, and it just turns people off immediately. So,
well, Joe, that's the whole reason I had to do with this entire other podcast, because it was so divisive within the truth community. That the interesting thing is, I had no idea that it was going to blow up like the way it did. There's obviously a lot of people out there who are interested in the subject because it's just absolutely floors me every time I see the numbers. So there is a lot of interest out there. At the same time, it is quite the divisive subject.
And it's weird that just someone showing interest, you could be ostracized.
Yep.
I mean, for your beliefs, that's just asking questions starting in 2020 was just not allowed anymore. So I don't know how we got that quick or that crazy, but we're here. So.
And when you look at things like, and I should preface this with, I think all of us were at one point of our lives would just quickly eschew the thought of flat Earth, right? So I always try to be careful because the first 49 years of my life, I was the same way. But at the same time, in retrospect, you look, well, they faked the moon landing, man's greatest accomplishment. You look at all the lies of the last 3 years, and then you think, and I do think, because listening to your story, when the COVID thing happened, many of the guests that I've had on this program and my other podcast, their journey to truth happened in 2020. And I continue to say, some people don't agree with me, but I think they did overplay their hand with COVID.
Yes. And if they're lying about COVID, which I think it's pretty clear they are, everything. I mean, the COVID virus, vaccines, where it's coming from. If they're lying about all this, then they're lying about things in the past, whether it be 9/11, the moon landing, the shape of the Earth. But why is it so hard to think that they might lie about the shape of the Earth?
Yep.
But again, you say flat Earth, and people get turned off. So
very interesting. And I saw that in your email that you were 10 miles east, and that's a big thing because we know the wind goes west to east. Now, was there anything or any folks in your town who experienced discomfort in the time between, was it February 3rd and now?
Okay, so literally if you hop on the highway, which is about 2 minutes from my house, and go one exit up, that's almost where there was a video from Darlington, PA, where the clouds just look like it's something out of, like, I don't even know, like a horror movie. And the guy saying, these aren't storm clouds, it's from all the, I don't know if you ought to swear on this podcast, but that's all the crap they burned off up there. That was literally one exit up on the highway from my house. I haven't really experienced anything. I used to have, which is another weird story, I used to have really bad allergies until, like, I guess the summer of 2019. My allergies just suddenly started. Cutting the grass was just miserable, stuff like that. Pollen, trees, any type of, I would do yard work, it would be miserable. This is all the way back to like when I was like in middle school. I remember this stuff. Got allergy shots then, really didn't help that much. But all of a sudden, like 2019, my allergies started clearing up. Now, I went on a walk a couple days ago, or I guess it was about a week and a half ago, and my sinuses started flaring up a little bit. It could be just seasonal allergies, but It's something that in 2023, you literally have to start a journal and write everything down that happens to you every day to keep track. Because I mean, we live in a world where it's such a crazy news cycle. Number one, and like I said, number two, it's you never know. You never know. It could be something serious. It could be just allergies.
Yeah, you gotta question every single thing these days. That's for sure, because it is getting harder and harder to discern the truth from fiction these days. So let's talk about your willingness to even look into flat Earth. How did that happen?
I want to say it happened when this is the what is his real name? Let me see. It's B.O.B. is the rapper.
Yep.
And then Kyrie Irving on Twitter, I think it was like 2016, we're talking about like flat Earth. And of course, and you talked about Neil deGrasse Tyson. Of course, I believe it wasn't the Daily Show. It was the show that came off after him. Larry Wilborn or something was the host.
Okay.
And he had Neil deGrasse Tyson on literally like the day after Kyrie Irving and B.O.B. were talking about flat Earth on Twitter and stuff. And first thought I thought was like, this is like a show that books people out like months in advance. How the hell they get Neil deGrasse Tyson to just show up like this over someone tweeting about flat Earth? It's crazy. And I listened to what Neil deGrasse Tyson said, and I can't believe it that I'm saying it now, but I actually kind of bought it because I went to the Flat Earth Society and I see this giant disc flying around, and I'm like, this is the dumbest thing ever. What the hell's wrong with Kyrie Irving? What's wrong with this B.O.B. rapper guy? How much drugs are these guys doing? And then, long and behold, 2020. I'm not necessarily sold on the flat Earth. I believe we could be living in like a giant Grand Canyon, sort of surrounded by like an ice wall. I think you had a woman on, I think maybe 2 episodes ago, and she briefly went into that. So it's possible that we could be living in a giant crater and that the Earth is flat and it just goes on forever after that ice wall. We don't know. We'll never know. I'm going to delve into that whenever I get jumping here. But it started back in 2016 for me, and it's crazy how it took me about 8 years to evolve into this. And like I said, I'm not sold on anything, but I am wide open to hear everything, and I want to argue with people. Honestly, I'm at the point now where I want to just, but the people have to be interested, or else, because they're just turned off right away when you mention flat Earth. You can mention like COVID vaccine, you can mention moon landing, you can mention a lot of stuff, but as soon as you get into certain things like flat Earth or stuff, you can say we were created by aliens, and people will argue with you. But flat Earth, they're just like they shut you off immediately.
Yep. That they refuse to listen. And I'll tell somebody, go get me a ball and show me how you can hold it up in the air, how that ball can stay up in the air without it. Just there's so many things in retrospect. And now I will say, and a few other people have said this, when I was in science class in, 4th or 5th grade, teacher had the bucket with the string on it, started swirling it around and said, "This is gravity." And I said, well, if that really was the case, why don't we turn the bucket around and circle it and see if the water stays in the bucket, which we know it won't. And he just kind of gave me the, oh, well, and moved on. There's just so many aspects that people aren't willing to question. The numerology, how many times they've changed the distance of the moon and the sun throughout the centuries, and just stand out, and people will not acknowledge. Go look at the lake. We're not moving. Go look at the sun. It's not 93 million miles away. It's right there. And it goes back to, I guess, the last 3 years. People will believe anything they say. They won't trust their natural instincts. And again, I was part of that crew for most of my life, so I'm not like preaching to people. I'm just kind of, now that I'm out of the closet per se, I'm begging people to see the bigger picture, because once I really found out that, the globe was a hoax, it really changed my perspective on life.
I mean, it would change everyone's perspective on life. It would actually ruin the entire narrative over the last 2,000 years.
Yep.
That's why it's so hard for people, I think. You think of it this way. If these astrophysicists, these people, whether you're taking the vaccine and people that are going to medical school or an astrophysicist, they go to these schools and everyone is taught that this is how it is, and they're all thinking alike. If you're all thinking alike, is anyone really thinking for themselves? No.
Yeah.
You're not.
Not at all. Have you
So
tried? Go ahead. Sorry.
Go. No, go.
I was just going to ask you, have you tried to share this knowledge with family and friends, and how has that gone for you if you have?
Everything except for flat Earth. It's great. Like, honestly, right now, I'm whispering a little bit because I actually had to put Hey Bear sensory on upstairs for my wife. I'd rather her think I was downstairs cheating on her than talking about this.
Oh, so your wife isn't, is she into, like, let's say 9/11 and those type of quote unquote conspiracies?
Absolutely not. She's open to it. She doesn't really care what difference are you going to make is like her philosophy. But when it came to our son and stuff like vaccines, like she made me like swell up with like tears when she was like, they want us to shoot him up at his 3-month appointment with like 8 shots, but he can't even have water. And I'm like, well, that's a very good point. I'm glad you're making that. You're thinking logically.
Yep.
And it's true. You can't even have water, but he can have all these deadly chemicals. And you know, we didn't vaccinate him at all. We definitely weren't doing the COVID one.
Good.
I was going to come to the decision with my wife, and she didn't want to vaccinate. Will he never get a vaccine? I don't know. Probably not, to be honest with you. But when we denied the Hep B vaccine, when he was like 5 minutes old, they looked at us like we were crazy. And I'm thinking, like, my son isn't like, you get Hep B through like getting tattoos and sexual deviance. Exactly. My son just got out of the womb. He's not a sexual deviant. He doesn't need this. And it's all in money. She does research on like that aspect of it now when it comes to our kid, which I love because it gives me more time to look into stuff like this. I don't have to research all. But we found out that these pharmacists, or not pharmacists, these pediatricians, they get paid a lot of money when I think it's like 90% or 95% of their patients, which are kids, are vaccinated. And that's, talk about a conflict of interest. Like, aren't these doctors already making enough? And you're going to throw them extra money as an incentive to pump possibly what could be, we don't know. I mean, maybe vaccines are fine. Maybe the mRNA vaccine, I don't care what you say, that's not good for a 6-month-old. But everyone's had a job. You can't tell me there's some doctors out there that just listen to what they're told. Like, a rep comes in and say, here, you're going to give this, and this. They're not going to take out hours of their day and research all this stuff. They're going to just take the accepted paper that's probably peer reviewed, which means that everyone just already thought the same and agreed on it anyway. It's just, I don't know how we got here. It probably took centuries, but it's all based on bias. So.
Yep, sure is. Somebody had sent me, or I came across it, I forget. I thought it was an email. Let me look real quick if I have it on my phone. But it was basically outing one of, is this it here? The Anthem. But this is from last year. I think I covered it. But the Anthem medical system, they had the COVID-19 vaccine provider incentive program for ages 6 months and plus. And basically the doctors were getting $50 per vaccine. And they would get it in a monthly stipend directly from, I think, Pfizer. So there's certainly something nefarious about, if you truly do have a miracle drug, people will pay for it. So people, again, going back to the name of your podcast, Thinking Logically, people, when they hear these things, they better be cognizant of the end game of all this.
If they put a sign on their door that said, here, we're getting this much money to do this to you, do you think as many people would? First of all, it would raise a lot of questions. Hey, why are you getting this money? But people just don't care enough to look into things, because it used to be one man would go to work 40, 50 hours a week and be able to support his family while the wife stayed at home and raised a family and cooked and cleaned. Now, my wife makes $80-some thousand a year. I don't do terribly. I'm in a labor union. I work at a few nuclear power plants. I've been off work for about 2 years now because I made a few wise investments on Robinhood. But at some point in the next year, I'm going to be going back to work. But it used to be that you'd be able to have at least one parent stay at home full time with the kids and raise the kids.
That's right.
Now both parents have to go to work, and the system raises them.
That's right.
So,
yeah, that's a big deal. Going into, let's start touching on some of the subjects that we have listed here. The moon landing. How much have you guys looked into that, and what are your big red flags with the moon landing?
Okay, so I got an entire spiel here on the moon
Nice.
landing. As for my podcast, we don't delve too far in conspiracies. We are going to do a March Madness themed bracket where we have like 64 conspiracies, and we're going to do like I don't even know how we're going to score it. Whose line is it anyway? Probably point scoring if you know the show. But we're just going to pick a winner. It'll probably be like the moon landing or something like that, I'm sure. But so as far as the moon landing, when we go to are you a Chris Berman fan? Because we're going to go all the way to
Chris Berman.
The original moon landing. Actually, let's cover all of them. I think it's pretty clear one of the main reasons we quit going is because they knew they wouldn't be able to fake it much longer without people figuring it out. It's that simple with Hollywood CGI. But there's a lot of other things that just don't logically add up with everything else, especially why we quit going. So let's cover the whole story. We go to the moon a few times, and the latter trips we even bring a fold-up dune buggy for some reason. We explore, what was it, maybe 1% of the surface, and then all of a sudden decide, okay, that's enough, pack it up. We know everything we need to know about this rock. That's it. No more landings. Does that make any sense to you, George?
Of course not, no.
Now, to truly understand why that doesn't make sense, you have to go, like Chris Berman says, back in history, all the way to, I guess, 1492. So what happened then? Christopher Columbus discovered a new world. He didn't even find what he was looking for. But what happened after he got back to Spain? Word spread of this, new land that needed to be explored. And not only did Christopher Columbus go back like 5-6 times or something, but it didn't end there. All of a sudden you had other countries, other empires, they caught wind, no pun intended, and they set off on their own expeditions to explore this new world. But it didn't stop there either. I mean, decades later, you had private companies, even brave independent explorers or people trying to just escape persecution from their homeland, building or buying their own ships and making the journey. It was literally called the Age of Discovery.
Yep.
But it took them centuries before they even knew how big the continents were. I mean, there's some areas that still haven't had a human footprint on it in North America or South America. Now, compare that with the moon landing. Ask yourself, have we already discovered or know everything there is to know about this giant rock supposedly floating in circles around us every 28 days? No. So why do we quit going?
Well, because we lost that technology. Remember what Pettit said, Don Pettit. We lost it. I don't know. Maybe it's in my closet. I need to go check.
I have it right here.
The moon in a nanosecond.
Can you hear this?
Yep.
The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
I mean, he sounds like he's lying to his kids.
I would start a fire, but I completely forgot how the whole system works to start a fire.
Exactly. I mean, how any adult would sit there and listen to that and not say, wait a minute, who is this guy again? What did he go to school for? I just don't understand. You can't give me it was too expensive or we lost the technology. You can't give me that bullcrap because NASA could have or probably has an endless budget, just like going back in history, just like the Dutch or British East India companies did, or the Hudson Bay Company did. And if you think about it, the Hudson Bay Company would have been the equivalent of a moon base. And that came about 100 years after they discovered the New World.
Yep.
So it all doesn't make logical sense from that standpoint, how we just packed up and quit going in the 70s. And we had so much better technology in the last 60 years. Why aren't we going there and trying to understand anything about that giant rock, like I said, that rotates us every 28 days. Yep. That we've never even seen the backside of it.
Exactly. And, two things I'd like to add. Number one is show me one piece of technology that is ever going backwards. Zero, right?
Yeah.
Cars are better. Computers are better. We should be able to go to the moon in a jiffy. The other one was, and it's kind of slipped my mind. People after the first two already lost interest, so they had to do the fake Apollo 13 emergency mission, and people were praying, and all the while this guy Jack Swigert and Fred Haise were Freemasons who were all part of the, they used their rockets as a lifeboat to return to Earth, and it was labeled a successful failure. So that did draw in some more attention, and they did a 14 and 15, a couple more, and it's just a joke.
George, I like you. You literally not only read my mind, you read my next point I was going to make.
Oh, okay.
The Apollo 13 movie. No. I love it. Intelligent minds think alike. So the Apollo 13 moon mission, that got its own movie.
Yep.
Name another. Like, there's never been a movie made about going to the frickin' moon and landing on it and jumping around. You know why? Because they wouldn't be able to tell which was real and which was the Hollywood movie.
That's right. And who was in Apollo 13, by the way?
Tom Hanks.
Yep.
Who, if you follow that whole stuff from 2020 and the QAnon stuff, which I hate the term QAnon.
I do too.
But Tom Hanks. I like Kevin Bacon, and I forget the other guy. I think he's dead. The third actor. I can't remember who the third actor was now. But of course, they have all their CIA. I'm going to say it. I mean, if we're talking about that, it's Tom Hanks is likely a CIA asset. If not CIA, then some kind of government asset. I mean, they're all actors. Let's be honest.
Yep. And they all have their humiliation rituals that they do, and they put him through Bosom Buddies as a humiliation ritual. He comes out of that, a few years later, he's the biggest actor in the world.
Exactly. Gets all the best scripts, and then he becomes a producer, a director, everything. It's just amazing how that could fast track you.
Yep.
But yeah, so the Apollo 13 thing, that's the only one. And they didn't land on the frickin' moon. It's the only one that gets a movie that concentrates the entire time in space. I saw First Man. I think it was First Man. And they never show anything about the moon. They never show anything about the moon landing. I said, well, I don't want to see all the training. I want to see the action. What do we do? It's mankind's greatest achievement, and you never make a frickin' movie about it? I mean, beating the Nazis was a pretty big achievement, and how many movies were made about that?
Thousands.
I just don't understand. But so let's move on. I know you made the comparison how there's always a globe in every classroom.
Yep.
And one of the first memories I have, I actually still have the globe actually. When I was about, we'll say 5 or 6 years old, my parents got me a globe. I remember just spinning that thing. Look, I was always interested as a kid. I wasn't into flat Earth obviously then, but spinning the globe and everything. Well, fast forward, I'm 38 now. We're planning my son's room. And my wife was like, well, what do you want to get to occupy this fall? What kind of decorations do you want? I was like, honestly, I want to put a giant map on there. And this is when I was kind of like, on the fence about like the flat Earth thing. And I got an old world map, and it has like all of the sailing journeys on it. And it's very interesting. It's like a $400 or $500 map, but it covers up a giant part of the wall. And it's got like the dates, Magellan, James Cook, all these other ones where they sell, not like, 100% specific, but just a general thing that I look at. And right away, some of the first things I noticed, 2 examples. And I think you covered these in detail, so I won't delve that hard into them. But Sir James Cook's voyage, and then the first one to sail around the globe, Magellan. Both of them voyages, I think, or one for sure, I think had their sailing logs lost. Very, very convenient, of course. But if you look at the time they spent sailing around like South America and going down, I noticed that it takes them so much longer to sail around the Earth the further they went down south, which makes 0 sense to me. None.
Right. If you're on a globe, that makes 0 sense if you do it by the globe model.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're getting off their boat and exploring Antarctica. Like I know, right. I think Magellan was killed like in New Zealand or somewhere, the Philippines or something, whatever. You couldn't explore. You couldn't get off the boat and explore ice, whatever it is, mountain. So that alone raises more questions. Where are we at now? We're in like the 1600s. So let's fast forward about 400 years here. We'll start in the 1930s, and this is I've never heard like anyone else make this comparison. So we'll start in the 1930s, and then we're going to go back and then forward again. So I'm sure some of your listeners know that actually it was the Nazis that were the first ones to put a rocket into space. And the other reason I've known that is because when I was younger, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way up until like college, I'd watch the History Channel, every World War II battle. I mean, I could probably be a World War II historian. I know so much about the topic, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. But very few people know as a fact that the Nazis were actually the first ones to put a rocket into space. And I think you cover that, obviously, in detail. But it begs the question for me. The first thing that I ask is, what the hell did they see or discover when they sent that first rocket to space? Did they see a globe or endless land? Which was it? And here's where it gets interesting, George. What did the Nazis do shortly after? They started exploring Antarctica.
That's right. During the war, or right before it, either late 30s. Yeah, maybe it was 1939, but I think the war had already kicked off and they were already down there.
I think it was months or weeks before the war. I have to go back and, I mean, you could use Wikipedia, I guess, and just tell it right there. But that's the crazy thing. Shortly after that, we had a giant war involving basically every freaking nation in the world for over 6 years. There's no time to explore Antarctica. There's no more Antarctica exploring adventures anymore. Forget it.
There you go. New Swabia. That's what it was. It was explored by Germany in early 1939. There you go.
And then a war breaks out right after, a giant world war, where if you are sailing anywhere, you could get sunk. You see, it's just another coincidence. It doesn't prove anything.
No,
but it raises
questions.
Questions.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's back up a little bit further now. Let's go back to like the late 1800s, early 1900s, when people first started exploring Antarctica. You had Shackelford. I think you covered a couple of the ones. I forget the Norwegians, who that was. Mm-hmm. But I know you already talked about, like I said, their trips, so we won't go into detail. But again, shortly after people start exploring Antarctica and try to get to the South Pole, what happens about 5-6 years later? You got World War I breaking out.
That's right.
And again, you got all the world's major powers engaged in a conflict. This time you have submarines. So another 4-year war, then peace. Then, like I said, the Nazis get rockets, and they're getting way more than a 40,000-foot view, followed by all of a sudden they want to go to Antarctica, as well as a few other strange places, to say the least. I guess we could delve on that later, but Hitler went to, like, what was the mountain range in Siberia, Himalayas, maybe, I can't remember. But they explored a lot of weird places. And next thing you know, like I said, another world war. This time, though, it ends with the Allied powers winning decisively. And then, what was it? A year later, 2 years later, Admiral Byrd goes down to Antarctica?
Yeah. And he takes a large fleet with him.
Yeah. I wonder why. I mean, Lord knows what really, we'll probably never know what really happened there. But he comes back and starts talking about it to the media, which I think you've actually played it's just strange and weird and uncomfortable. It's like the person interviewing him is like their jaw's going to fall off. It's going so low.
Yep.
Keep in mind, we have complete peace because we just defeated Nazism in the Japanese Empire. A world war just ended. Like, we had two sides. One side won. Well, what happened next? You had the Korean War, and a few years later, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Cold War. You see the pattern here, George?
Yep.
Now, all these conspiracies are becoming popular. Fast forward today. They're all becoming popular again, and you have more people than ever asking legitimate questions. What are we on the verge of again, George? Another world war? A nuclear war? It makes perfect sense. It makes you think, like, is this all, as the WWE term, kafabi? Like, is this all just scripted? As soon as people start, I don't want to say people, as soon as a large part of the general public or start asking questions or certain areas start getting explored, it's like you have a world in chaos.
Yep. And
through chaos comes order.
That's right.
Another thing, I just don't know why this popped in my head too. It makes you think about that Storm Area 51 thing from, I think it was it 2019?
Yeah, right before the whole scamdemic, yep.
Yeah, then you had COVID happen.
Yep.
Now, this could all just be one giant, big series of coincidences. And I told you I hate the term QAnon. But someone I heard a long time ago, how many coincidences until it's literally statistically impossible? And come on, you have. If we are in another world war here in a few months, if you have 3 world wars all of a sudden in a row, as soon as there's like a giant like shift in like awakening or people asking questions or new discoveries, it just raises so many questions. But you know, a lot of people don't care anymore because they're more worried about keeping up with the Kardashians instead of keeping up with like things that matter.
Well, and that's one thing that we have more comfort. We have more creature comforts. We have more diversions than we had, back in 1917 and, the early 1940s as well. So, people are less apt to rise up and do anything about it, I'm afraid.
Yes, you're right. And you know what? I think they've dumbed us down a lot. So,
yeah.
It's sad, but it's probably true.
Yeah, the podcast, let me grab this. The podcast I did yesterday on the book Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. You can find it online, or you can buy the book for $7 or $8 online. And it really breaks down how the whole cycle works, how countries overextend themselves, and then the bankers will basically start a war, and the whatever side has the more promising future is the side they're going to fund. They'll fund both sides because they make so much money off of the interest. And people talk about all of, and I know this is a Flat Earth Files podcast, but we have so many problems in our country. Nobody ever talks about the Federal Reserve, and until we start printing our own greenbacks, we're screwed as a nation.
That's a very good point, and people just don't understand the Federal Reserve. You want to know why? It's really not taught in schools for some reason. I don't know why. But
now listen,
I learned about that on YouTube.
I went to school back in the day. They never taught us how to do taxes. They didn't teach us about the Federal Reserve. They just taught us what they wanted to know, and part of that in the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars was the dumbing down of the quote-unquote lower classes. And that's why the Illuminati talks about illumination and those guys having a whole completely different knowledge than we have.
I mean, it makes logical sense to me. I don't understand how the average person can't see this, and it has to be just because they don't care or just aren't paying attention. Let's be honest. If you go in a circle of people and you start talking about basketball, football, it's fine. It's whatever. You can't mention current events. You can't mention politics. You'll get shouted down. Why are you talking about that? No one likes to talk about politics. Well, why? It's affecting all of us. It's not affecting me. The score of the basketball game. I don't know how we got to this point, but people got to wake up.
Yeah, and part of it I get, because I was, listen, when I was in the military, I was up at 5 a.m. every day. I didn't get home till 6, and that was if I wasn't deployed. So and there's single parents out there just working their behind off to make ends meet. That's all part of their plan too. And that was very well written in that book. Is they want to keep us busy. They want both parents. They want the economy to be so hyperinflated that both parents have to work. They're busy, and you take your child and you put them in. And listen, I'm sure when we were in Texas, it was a pretty decent public school system down there. But, in 2023, many of the public school systems and even some private school systems have been completely indoctrinated with scientism and, pro-government stuff that really, and, scientism, the big one, that is really molding the children's mind in a way that shouldn't be.
No, you're absolutely correct.
And that's a decision you'll have as a parent down the road, how to educate your child. Maybe you've already made that decision.
I honestly, it's a coin flip right now, but we're leaning towards more homeschooling. Luckily, both of my in-laws are actually teachers.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So that helps tremendously, because I think my mother-in-law is scheduled to retire here in about 3 or 4 years. And I think when her parents are divorced, but when her father retires, I think he just wants to fish and do stuff. But my mother-in-law, I have to say, I could count on her to teach him, and she has experience, because it's hard. I can't be an expert on everything. My wife can't be an expert on everything, but we have someone that has experience in teaching. So that's just one way to do right there. Because I never thought I'd be someone that would homeschool their kids.
Me neither, brother. Me neither.
I watched like I said, my friend's a high school basketball coach. I go to a high school basketball game in 2021, and the players are wearing masks on the court, dribbling the ball, and half of them having them a chant. And it's just like, if you fell asleep in 2019 and you woke up in 2021 at a high school basketball game,
what the heck?
All the kids are wearing masks playing basketball. Like, what about when they swept? And then at halftime, or I'm sorry, not halftime, maybe at halftime too, actually, in between the JV and varsity game, they make everyone get up
And they would they had like 15 people come in with masks on and sanitize the bleachers. And I'm like, what is going on here? Now I'm never going to be able to take a leak or you can get a coffee or anything.
It's a bizarro world, man.
It is. But hey, do it long enough and it'll be normalized. And
Exactly.
I think that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah. You walk past people in the Sam's Club or wherever you go shopping now. Many times you don't even give it a second thought anymore because it's just been normalized, and that's what they want.
And honestly, in a few years, they'll never show any video that if they had it their way, they'll just quit showing the people how, and they'll just remember this is how it was. There was a dangerous pandemic and we got through it. Just like the moon landings. Do you think it's weird that mankind's greatest achievement, you never see it on TV anymore? You want to know? It's because people aren't that stupid anymore. They'll be able to figure it out because of Hollywood CGI. I mean, some of the videos of them it looks like a giant mortar gets shot off. They're on the moon, and all of a sudden it's a big explosion, and the thing just rises up and goes into outer space, and the camera pans up. And no one's like, well, how'd the camera pan up? What you do, send a radio signal? You couldn't even talk to President Nixon? I don't know. But actually, let's get into astronauts a little bit here.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, have you ever woke up in the morning and looked at yourself in the mirror? I know I have. And usually I don't look very handsome.
It's not a pretty sight.
No, I usually look like absolute crap.
Yep.
But for some reason, astronauts stay for months in the International Space Station. And the first burning question, I'm sorry, who's cutting their hair? I mean, the one guy, let me see if it's Scott or Mark Kelly. Yeah, the one guy spent like 2 years in space, Scott Kelly.
Yep.
Of course, he's bald and has alopecia. Of course. What are the odds? And because he looked like Robin Williams in Jumanji if he wasn't. And of course, he has a twin brother that's now a senator, Mark Kelly. And of course, Mark Kelly's wife was that congresswoman that was shot in the head a decade ago. It's freaking hilarious. I mean, not the shooting, but just the amount of coincidences.
Right.
Back to my original point. How are they staying clean on the International Space Station? Where's the hygiene at, George? How do the women shaving their legs and the armpits and everything? What happens when they menstruate? The little bubbles of blood just float around? It's a legitimate question, but if you... I'll be stomping on women's issues if you mention this in public. But there's videos of people getting their hair cut in space. But come on, think about this logically. What was it? I think the clippers have a vacuum on it. But look, my wife, I don't want to swear or anything. My wife bitches me all the time about my beard clippings, and I actually hold a vacuum up to my face now when I shave. Hair still gets everywhere. You can't avoid it. It's hair. Don't tell me in zero gravity it's just getting sucked right into the vacuum that's connected to the clippers. I don't understand it at all. I don't understand it at all. But another tidbit I found. So this is from NASA, I think. Researchers found a number of genes that inhibit hair growth were more active during spaceflight, suggesting it may grow more slowly or stop altogether while in orbit. But there's also studies that hair follicles of men and women may react different to environment and space. Each strand of hair is removed from someone's hair but it's beneficial because any strand of hair can fly in microgravity and not immediately be removed. It's almost like they're making this stuff up as they go along. It's like, oh, we forgot about the hair growth. I don't know. Tell NASA to write a memo about they got clippers with a vacuum on it, and not one hair gets stopped. It's like, come on, guy, come on, give me a break here. It's just it doesn't make any sense at all. You never see the astronauts looking like they just woke up. How do you take a shower?
I'd like to know, is Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's moon diapers in the Smithsonian? Because I think they were on the moon for almost 22 hours, right?
Good point. What happens if maybe they got a little bit nervous and got the runs? I mean, I would.
You get in the space buggy and you go to the nearest latrine, of course, bathroom.
Yeah, this piece of tinfoil, we're going to fly through the Van Allen belt and somehow survive the radiation. Yeah, I'm not nervous at all. I'm not going to crap my pants. I don't know. It doesn't make a lick of sense. When you actually look at the thing, I don't even call it a spacecraft. The thing that they told us took the astronauts to the moon. It's like, guys, come on.
Lawn chair and aluminum foil.
I mean, you couldn't do anything better than that. It's like, okay, so the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's been forever. I think I've seen it beginning to end, maybe like 2 or 3 times. And it's been a long time since I've seen any parts of it. But that movie came out before, and it had a purpose. It put in everyone's brain with space travel, exploration, whatever, what it should look like. Just like when you think of traveling to a different dimension, you think you have to go through a portal. That's from movies. They got everyone to that. This is what it's supposed to look like. A movie. They put it in your brain before they actually do it. So you have something to go off of. This way you'll question this. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you a couple things that don't make much sense when you sit and think about it. Some other things. Why in the hell would the first mission to the moon be called Apollo? You're not landing on the freaking sun. Apollo is the name of the sun god, I think.
Yeah, these guys always tip the cap to these gods. If you look at the new missions, what is it called? Artemis. That's like, isn't Artemis like Apollo's sister or something?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's almost, you could look at it that way, or they're throwing it so far on your face. No, we're not laying on the moon. We're naming this after the sun, you idiot. Can't you idiots figure it out? And then you've mentioned this. I've always wondered this, because I think my grandfather moved to Florida, I believe I was like 7 or 8 years old. And he lives in Boca Raton, Florida, loves it down there. He's like 90-some years old. God bless him. He went down for one of the launches. It would have been, probably one of the last ones in the 70s. And he always said he wanted to live in Florida after that launch. And I remember watching, if it was not the one that crashed, he went down for another one where maybe they went up to the International Space Station. And I watched it with him, and I always wondered, why in the heck did they not just go straight up?
Yeah, they go up a little bit, and then they turn. They make a turn towards... And I don't know if I've done an actual podcast on this, but you know,
are you going to say the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah, because I think they really started that thing in the 50s and 60s. The stories about the Bermuda Triangle, and I think a lot of people think they do that to scare people away because that's where they land the rockets.
It makes sense, because I've noticed when I did my research on that they all go like that way.
Yeah,
and obviously you can't follow them on a flight tracker or anything. But then you had that one guy, I believe it was in the 50s or 60s. It has audio of him crashing in the Bermuda Triangle. They have no idea what happened. He says everything's upside down. I mean, I don't know if that really happened, or if it was just like a controlled leak to make people wonder about the Bermuda Triangle. It's all just so crazy and weird. But they always go straight up and then make a hard right turn right towards the area of Earth where everything goes missing.
Yep, because if it went straight up,
it's hilarious.
Yeah. Did you see the video from the Go Fast rocket?
No.
The one that hit the firmament just stopped. Boop.
Oh, whose rocket was it?
I just know it's called the Go Fast rocket. If you just go to YouTube and put in Go Fast rocket, you'll see the video where it's just going straight up and then it just stops.
Okay, yeah, yes. So what was the explanation on that one?
I don't know if they ever gave an explanation. I'm sure they'd say something like, "Oh, the video, we ran out of film. The video just stopped."
Oh, we ran out of film. Sorry, we have an explanation. Oh no, we're going to war with someone now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was on a Telegram right before you jumped on tonight. I was in a little round table tonight. Was like I'm sure you'll hear it on the news tomorrow. Just massive attack by Russia tonight.
Really?
Yeah, it's the biggest aerial bombardment in the last year. It's pretty big. So yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. The first thing I thought was, well, with all the things going on, you had that Marine testify today, which really did damage. And then everything with the videos coming about January 6th and Old Man River getting escorted everywhere. I think they need a really big diversion.
Then that Nord Stream. Actually, so for the Nord Stream, have you been following that?
Yeah, so Seymour Hersh wrote the article, and then the U.S. came out yesterday and said some Ukrainians rented a yacht and some Ukrainian divers did it. I just couldn't stop laughing for hours.
Okay, so interesting, and we're going to break off here for a second, but interesting story about that. So I went to high school with a kid, actually a pretty good friend of mine, and we actually just covered this on the podcast last episode. I actually didn't even want to cover it at all, but So a friend of mine went to the Merchant Marine Academy for 4 years, graduated, was a great athlete, very, very, very tough dude.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Very tough dude.
You have to be.
And all of a sudden, I think it was 2 years, maybe a year and a half after graduation, he was, for some reason, in the South China Sea near the Philippines, and his boat went missing. And you didn't hear anything about it for like a year. And then in I knew, I always had like a feeling. But in 2020, Yahoo released an article about it. It was 4 people, and here they were all CIA agents, and they were going to plant. He was a scuba diver, of all things. I would have never thought him as a scuba diver, but he was trained in scuba, and him and another guy, the 4 were supposed to go underwater, plant a listening device, and monitor, I believe, Chinese warships in the area off the coast of the Philippines, and then get back on the boat, chill in Japan for about 2 weeks, and then go back and pick up the device. Well, I think it was Hurricane Hugo hit, and they were lost at sea.
Oh, wow.
And what happened in Nord Stream is this same exact situation, just instead of it being the CIA, it's this pro-Ukrainian group. And I can't remember the branch. I think he was the SAB, it was called at the time. But the CIA was a company. They had a fake company in, I think, Panama City, Florida, that sold yachts to like fake millionaires, and that was like their cover and everything. But it just made me think, like, is this the CIA-backed operation that, like, my I'm not saying, like, obviously my friend was bad, or even the people that are doing the bombing are bad. You know, you serve. You know, thank you for your service, but like, you're told to do something, you do it, or you face the consequences.
Yeah, unless it's, really, if it's an unlawful order, you got, if you're told to rush the hill and there's a machine gun up there, you got to rush the hill.
I mean, in unlawful order, good luck. I mean, you're putting your hands in I don't know if it's tribunal or court martial, whatever they call it now.
Yep.
But it is what it is. And that Nord Stream 2 thing just really resonated with me, because it's like, holy cow, like a kid I know did the same exact thing, and, he's gone now. I mean, I always hold a little bit of hope that, there's a chance that maybe he was captured by the Chinese, or maybe they use that as a way to hide his identity, and he really is still out there. You'll never know. I know his family kind of well. I haven't talked to him in like a decade, but one of his best friends, actually, was in my wedding and everything. So I'm still close with like that group of friends still. Yeah. And it's just weird, man. Just never see him again. Just lost at sea.
That's sad.
But let's move back onto the conspiracies here. Not that that's not a conspiracy, but the far out ones here. So, George, what are the odds that the sun and the moon, vastly different in size, yet appear the same size in our sky? I mean, there's no other planet. There's no other planet in our solar system that's a third of the size. There's no other moon in the solar system that's a third of the size of its planet. But it fits perfectly during an eclipse.
Yep.
The odds are no pun intended, astronomical at this point.
Yeah.
Again, none of this proves anything, but it's just one hell of a coincidence. Like all of this adding up. Also, let me see what else I've written down here. I should have sent you this picture. I took a picture about 5 days ago. The moon in like the middle of the day, but completely transparent, completely almost see-through.
Yeah, you can see the blue behind it, right?
Now, I have a question for you. Yeah. Explain that one.
Well, I think the big question, which again we'll never know, is what exactly is the moon made out of? Is it simply plasma, where it can go in and out of the firmament? Right? Is it something that has the ability to, and I've said, I get emails, I get a dozen emails every day, and people send me pictures and ask me questions. And one of the things I always put in there is, as smart, we're humans, and in human nature, it's our instinct to question everything, and we want to demand answers for everything, especially people who listen to our podcasts and folks like you and I. That's why we do it, is because we like going down the rabbit holes and trying to find not only, the answers on the books, but the legitimate true answers. And I just, God created, in my opinion, God created this very smart system, and there's just some things that we'll never know. And I think the moon is one of those, but I think it has something to do. Obviously, the sun is a positive energy. The moon is a negative type of energy, and it draws from the salt water. And I think It's a very smart system, and I think the way the moon is created, maybe just maybe, it has the ability to go in and out of the firmament. I don't know.
We'll never know. But then, like I said, you look at the Flat Earth Society, and it's like, oh, it's just a giant big flashlight. And it's like, okay, that turns me off immediately.
And the other thing is when you put a thermostat or a thermometer, excuse me, in moonlight, take the temperature and then you put it away in the shade, it's colder in moonlight by like 2 degrees.
I didn't believe that until I tried it myself.
Yep, 100%.
I mean, and then like I'm embarrassed to even like show someone that because they're going to be like, okay, what does that prove?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't prove anything, but it doesn't prove anything at all. But like, doesn't that make you wonder?
Yeah, and the sun is the complete opposite. You put thermometer in sunlight and then you move it to the shade. It's the complete opposite. You're going to get a higher reading with the sun. It's just.
But isn't the light coming from the sun reflecting off it?
Yeah, that's what they'll tell you. But bro, that's like, no, the moon is the light, and maybe it's charged by the sun, right? Like a solar system, like we have solar energy. Maybe it does get charged from the sun. That's something to think about, right?
Yes, it is. But again, when you think of the moon and it like the brightness, if it is the sun that's reflecting off it, how does any astronaut still have a face that's not melted off then? You realize how bright the moon is in the middle of the night?
The dusty old moon that they showed us. Remember the dusty old rock that they showed us? That's what's all bright.
You should come back looking like you were literally in the tanning booth for about a week and a half. I mean, come on. I don't care if your astronaut the face shield is gold plated or whatever. I don't care. That is the brightest thing I've ever seen some nights.
Yep.
How are you even looking at it if you're in outer space, let alone walking on it? It doesn't make any sense at all. Something here. The fake pictures. I mean, this is what really moved me towards. Well, wait a minute. If all the pictures are, why can't they just give it some real picture without it being edited like at all? I don't understand that. Like, it's not that hard. You guys have all this budget, all this money. You literally have people up in the International Space Station. Give them an iPhone camera and take the picture and send it back. I don't care if it looks like crap. I just want to see a real photo.
Yep. The sad thing is this is all a big Ponzi scheme. And obviously if they did that, they would expose, in my opinion, they'd expose themselves and NASA would cease to exist. And there's one thing that people have to understand is with NASA is very much a part of the military industrial complex. They fall into that category. You look at Space Force, by everybody's who loves Trump, that guy created Space Force, and that just created more tax dollars for the military industrial complex.
You're absolutely right. I mean, obviously I've voted for Trump twice, but my opinion on Trump, I'll support him. And then once he has, if he's the president, then I can always just turn on him immediately. If there's something I don't like, and I think a lot of people would join because there's a general hate for him. So that's a good thing. But it's sad to say, he's like our best hope right now. But he could be a giant psyop. I'm open to the possibility that he could be. I hope he's not. I don't maybe think he is. But you make a very good point about the Space Force. As far as NASA, I question, where is the money going? It's either going into someone's pockets, or they're actually using that and investing it in something that we can't see. And whether that be other lands that lie past Antarctica, or if there's an ice wall beyond the ice wall, or on the dark side of the moon if it really does exist. But the money has to be going somewhere. So you can believe it's going into billionaires' pockets or these globalist pockets, which it very well could be, or they're using it to fund something else that we are not privy to.
Oh, 1,000% for sure. My end game on all this stuff is I think these people are looking for eternal life, and they use all these funds and all these, the Federal Reserve, just all these people at the top of the food chain. That's what they're after. They promote all this evil on earth, so they have nothing but disdain for God. And one of the ways they kind of give it to God, for lack of a better word, is with space, their space programs, and through scientism. You look at the vaccines, how they belittled natural immunity, right? That was their way of saying God didn't make you perfect. In order to live through this, you need our medicine, right? All of these things, whether it be the globe, whether it be big pharmaceutical, it's all anti-God. And I think their end game is, you look at the Elons with Neuralink and Gates, whether or not they're just actors on the world stage or people who are put in certain positions, I think they're looking, maybe not eternal life, but to live a very long time. And I've pointed out on many occasions, if you look at a Rothschilds or look at the Queen, she just died almost 100. These people live almost 20 years longer than the average person does.
It is very strange, and they do it consistently. It's not like, it's just one or two or half of them. It seems like it's all of them.
Yep. And whether or not
you don't see too many people dying at like 50 years old, that are super famous. The elite, I'm talking about the elites of the elite.
Exactly. The 1% of the 1%, as I say.
Yeah.
Yeah. They obviously.
How many people die at 20 years old from cancer, or they have some kind of genetic disability from birth, and they're only going to live for 10, 15 years. It doesn't make sense from if you follow evolution, if evolutionary standpoint, because if an animal is in the wild and it has a recessive gene that allows it to not live or at something, we'll just say not have all 5 limbs or all 4 limbs or something, it's going to pass it on to its offspring. Then that offspring is eventually going to have it at some point. Nature has a way of perfecting itself.
That's right.
But for some reason, humans, the ones that supposedly landed on the moon and conquer this planet, we're the sickest health-wise. We're the sickest beings on the planet. It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. So clearly, we're being poisoned somehow, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
or multiple ways.
Yeah, for sure. And I always point out to people there is a correlation. Excuse me. Back in 1986, when Reagan let the vaccine makers off the hook, and he passed the National Vaccine Act of 86 or 87. You just look at the autism rates starting in 1990 till today. It used to be 1 in thousands, 5,000 or 6,000 had autism. I didn't know anybody in my school. I graduated in 1987. Nobody had autism. And now it went from 1 in several thousand to 1 in, is it 26 or 30 now? Something just absurd. And all one has to do is look at the vaccine schedule and how it's just gone off the chart. Maybe it's a combination of that, the fluoridated water, the GMOs in our food system. Maybe it's a combination, but we are, as a human race, are very sick right now. The average Joe.
Speaking of the water, me and my wife argue about this all the time, and I proved her wrong a few months ago. I can tell the difference between distilled water, just the tap water, and certain types of bottled water, which is crazy to me. But the only water I'll drink that isn't distilled, really, that's bottled, is Aquafina. And I looked it up. I think that's like one of the best ones. It doesn't have really any fluoride, but there's some bottled one that has fluoride in it too. I don't know I don't necessarily buy into everything they say about like tap water, but I'm not going to drink any tap water. I'll use I don't even get my dog's tap water anymore after the East Palestine thing, obviously. But I always drink bottled water, and I if they're going to poison us through vaccines, if they're going to poison us all these other ways, who's to say it ain't in the water? I don't know. I just don't know.
When we moved out here a couple of years ago, we're on our own well water now, and just straight out of the tap, it tastes very good. But we still use I forget the name, but we use one of those high-speed filters on top of it, and it's just the most amazing water.
You can actually taste the difference. Honestly, you really can. Like
we won't even drink bottled water anymore, because you look like companies like Coca-Cola make many of the waters that you drink.
Nestle too. I think that's like one of the worst ones.
Yep.
Oh, there's Nestle. I think it's Nestle.
Yeah, I think they're based out of Switzerland, and I've done many podcasts about Switzerland.
Oh, of course, it's like Global Central. I think there.
Yep.
So go figure. They were never attacked during World War II. Whenever every other country.
No, that was like safe. That was the safe zone.
Yeah. Oh, it's because that one guy with a rifle could sit up there in the mountains and hold an entire division down. Okay, bomb him. Hey, all right, you got airplanes then. I just don't get it. It's when you sit back and you think about it, like I said, you almost have to laugh. It feels good to actually have people here, like your listeners. I don't know, but like to come here and talk about it, and just be completely honest. Like on my podcast, I couldn't say like half the stuff. Like I got a toe of everything. I like Elon. Like I got to almost be not an Elon fanboy, but in the mainstream media, it looks like, if you're a conservative, I guess, it looks like he's doing great things. Which I'm not saying he's doing bad things, but I don't trust him. Really, he's a billionaire. I mean, he got Tesla was funded with government money. We paid for Tesla. We paid for SpaceX. Basically.
Yep. And the guy that the right is
my money back.
The guy that the right is championing, try that again, Elon. He wants to put a chip in your brain, so let's not put him on too high of a pedestal.
Exactly, and I'm willing to be flexible. Like if he says, okay, I want to put a chip in the brain for someone that's a paraplegic, they can't walk, and this will help them. That's one thing. But you shouldn't, me, you, kids, anyone, it shouldn't be the norm. I'm sorry.
No,
it shouldn't be the norm at all.
The thought of being hacked, just I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
A bunch of John Fetterman's, walking around. You could be hacked at any point and need video assistant devices to even speak.
Yeah. What did that George Hobbs say on his podcast? Click, shut me down.
Yeah. It's scary, but we're not that far away. That's why I think with these vaccines, maybe there's like a microchip, and if some of these famous people got them and they say something out of line, we'll just shut them, kill switch fit right there. It was in that game that was on the iPad. What was it, Plague? That came out in like 2014 or something, 13. Remember that game up where you have to infect the entire world? I think it was called Plague. It was on iOS.
Oh, wasn't it called Pandemic?
It might have been called Pandemic, yeah. Actually, it might have been called Pandemic.
Yeah, we actually had the board game.
Yeah, you have like a kill switch and you could shut everyone just off that had the virus in them at once. So they telegraph what they do before they do it, obviously.
Oh, yeah. They plan generations ahead.
Mm-hmm. Because they're actually paying attention. We as a general populace, bread and circus. I think you've actually used that term too. Bread and circus.
Yep, bread and circus. Yeah. Yep, you got your concerts, your music, your football, your baseball, your television, your movies. We're quite comfortable. Some of us are different levels of comfort, but at the end of the day, you look back, I guess, to the 1773, 1775 time frame, when you didn't have a whole lot, and freedom and religion meant everything to you, and people were willing to die for their freedom. And I spoke to some pretty smart people over the last couple of years, and they've told me many times that the tyranny that we're experiencing today is nothing, or I should say the tyranny that was put on the colonials back in the 18th century are nothing to what we are experiencing today. And our way of fighting it, unfortunately, we'll tweet, we'll put on Facebook how angry we are, and some of us will do podcasts and voice our displeasure. And that's why these things like January 6th have to happen, because they want you to be scared to be mad and show up and defy the government, because they'll throw in the gulag with the other 900 people.
Well, keep in mind, the founding fathers back in the 1770s, they started a revolution just by having a small percent of the population talking about it in taverns.
Yeah.
Which was, I guess, the Twitter of the age back then.
Yep, the 3%.
Exactly. And then you had, what was the stamp tax, the tea tax, and that you're talking about a small tax. They're not taxing 40, 50% of their income. Yeah. They're talking about just a small sales tax. And they said, And then after they started, going up, rising up, and all that stuff, then you had them saying, "Okay, we're going to come for your guns," and that's whenever everyone was like, "Nope, open revolution, Lexington and Concord," and it just spiraled from there. Now, no one wants guns. It seems like there's a good portion that are literally fooled into thinking, as if they weren't paying attention to Australia. What happened there since they got rid of theirs? If you give up your guns, you'll be safer.
Yeah, that was a false flag too down there.
They all are. They all are. All these people. You ever notice they always have three names, a middle name. Even I could sit here. I'm in my basement right now, and I have a giant big screen that I remember just watching so many things over the past year and a half, because we bought this house, I think, in when was it? Like January of 2021. We did here. So there was the subway bomber, the subway shooter or whatever.
Yep.
But I think black guy had 3 names. Called the police and told them he was at McDonald's and all this stuff. Never heard a thing after him.
Nope.
There was an Asian guy that shot a bunch of people with an AR-15 outside, I think Washington D.C. Got arrested. Never heard anything about him. Of course, he had 3 names. Uvalde. You never got to the bottom of Uvalde.
Nope.
And you know what happened after? They didn't care about how it happened. Why the police just sat outside and listened to gunfire in the room. They talked about banning guns after. Well, How the hell did the kid get $10,000 worth of guns? I can't just go and spend $10,000 on guns and ammunition, even if I have a suicide mission.
Oh, let's not forget about the truck he was driving, an $80,000 F-150.
Yes. None of it makes any sense. Then you had the guy at Michigan State just a few weeks ago. Well, he committed a felony, and George Soros, prosecutor, got him to plead down to a misdemeanor. So he was back out of jail and could still, I think, buy a gun. Meanwhile, if he would have been charged with a felony like he should have been, wouldn't have been able to buy a gun. So it's you try to explain this to people, though, and honestly, some of them are just too far gone. It's going to take, honestly, a giant event. Something like the entire country figuring out the thing was fake, or having a big giant discovery in Antarctica, finding a pyramid, and saying, well, wait a minute, there's just this giant ice fall. There might be something else is here. It's going to take everyone like that, because it's almost like a COVID event where everyone for a week stopped and watched the television, except it was just all lies then coming out of it. It's got to be truth this time. But I don't know if we'll ever get that.
Yeah. All of these things. And if I have to do a podcast on this, I've never done it, and I need to do a better job of doing, because people need to realize these type of events don't always just happen in the United States. You look at the 7/7, the tube incident in London, but April 28th, 1996, the Port Arthur massacre, which again led to Australia losing their guns for the most part. I think there's special regulations where people can keep a hunting weapon or something, but this guy was, he grew up, he was in special education, it was very much a government-led operation in order to take away the guns. And if you look at how tyrannical you thought things were bad here in Canada, look how bad things were in Australia. People showing up, cops were knocking on the doors. I'll never forget this video. A cop knocked on the door. A woman had made a Facebook post about that was anti-COVID, and they arrested her and drugged her, took her away from her child. And the husband's like, "Are you kidding me?" And these are just, don't ever give up your guns, folks.
Well, think about it this way. And I asked my state rep this one time, and I just got a weird answer where he just laughed, and I'm looking to change that. I said, why in the hell do I have to go to the courthouse and give you guys $36 every 4 or 5 years to have a permission slip to carry a gun? And he just laughed it off. And I was like, oh, it's a serious question. I mean, I'm a law-abiding citizen. The criminals, they don't care, because if they get caught with an illegal gun, they're just going to plead down to something anyway. But someone like me, I don't want to break the law. You're going to force me to break the law. Mm-hmm. When you start doing these unjust laws, you're going to force me to break them. And then everyone eventually is either going to have a choice to make: become a revolutionary, which I'm not promoting that or anything, or fall in line and be a slave.
Yeah.
And you could make the argument we're maybe a couple years, couple decades away from that. People don't realize it.
No, we're not very far. I've said many times, once they introduce the digital dollar, all bets are off. Because, listen, I've been deplatformed. I've had my PayPal, both personal and business, taken away. It's very upsetting. And I think I want to preface this next comment with whether or not you served or not, it doesn't depend. We all have an equal amount of freedom. But I did take it a little personally, because I'm like, hey, I spent 24 years in the military, and we had a lot of rough days in Iraq. And one of the few things our leadership would come and say, obviously there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So that whole premise was a lie. And, when you lose a buddy, you question, why the hell are we here? And we were told, well, listen, we're defending the Constitution. And then when you see what's going on around you, and you finally realize that the Constitution is just a meaningless piece of paper, and that's going to be hard for a lot of people to hear. But at the end of the day, just because we're told we have certain freedoms doesn't mean we really have them. And we don't.
You have to fight for them. Like in the Declaration of Independence, it literally says in the Declaration of Independence, like, listen, it's our right to overthrow the government because God, the kings and queens aren't giving these rights to us. Governments aren't giving these rights to us. We're given these rights by God.
That's right.
And I just don't think people understand that. If they would know our history, like, I'm sorry, obviously I believe the founding. There's people that think, alternate history, that founding fathers didn't exist. There's some deep conspiracies out there. Don't get me wrong, but I think they had to be some of the most intelligent men to ever live, to ever walk the earth. At least that I've read up on or heard of, because they created a document that it was flexible with time. It was very general, allowed us to have our rights that we needed to not fall victim to this globalist system that seems like it's been around for maybe a few thousand years.
Yep. Yeah, it's been around for a long time. I was just
thinking, go all the way back to Babylonian money magic tricks. I mean, you go all the way back then.
Yep.
So,
although you could go back to Babel, the Tower of Babel with Nimrod, if you wanted to. He wanted a one world government.
Exactly. I just think it should be little villages, almost like the Hobbit, like little shires here and there.
See, I've said that 100 times. Spot on, dude. Go ahead.
I mean, come on, that's exactly what it should be like.
Yep.
Exactly. It shouldn't be like one giant federal force, federal this, federal that. Like, there should be a couple understood laws, like, you can't murder anyone, this, that. But then you have all these, and this is how we get to like transgenderism, because all of a sudden it's the 51% that went. But what happens whenever you're lied to about what the 51% is via social media apps, Twitter, stuff like that? They're all government agents on Twitter. They're trying to push you in a certain direction to make you believe a certain thing. And one way they can do that is with these actors, paid actors that are probably CIA agents, athletes, social media. I mean, look at Twitter. Twitter and Facebook only beat out MySpace because all the celebrities started going to Twitter and Facebook. And I'm going to cover this in my podcast mention. This is that conspiracy. But if you think Mark Zuckerberg invented Facebook on the day after LifeLog, which is a DARPA operation, shut down, you can believe that, I guess. I don't care. But I mean, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Yeah, that's why we call it DARPA book.
Exactly. I mean, at least that's gaining some traction now. I mean, I've heard, like, I've talked to like people, like, I get a fantasy football group chat where, like, I mean, I actually had to leave a couple weeks ago because they really thought I went off like the deep end with some of the things. But I told them about the Zuckerberg thing, and all they're like, yeah, that is strange that DARPA, that LifeLog thing went out of existence the day before, and it's just very, very similar. I said, yeah, it's pretty strange. I said, well, what do you have on Facebook? Like, how much of your life's on Facebook? You're doing you're following their plan completely. I said, get another booster, please. Please get another booster.
It's funny, you're talking about the transgender agenda. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and the Mrs. Jill Biden gave a dude the Woman of the Year award today at the White House.
Like, where are all the women at? Like, 3 years ago, if you would have tried this crap, women, you would have been tarred and feathered by these women movements. Now it's like they've been beaten down into submission, probably because the people at the top of these movements are controlled, obviously, and they're told what to do. But they've been beaten down, like, by these men that are. You literally got men competing in women's bodybuilding.
Yep.
I could probably be a pro if I really tried hard. And I took it seriously. I might be able to be a female bodybuilder. Come on, let's be serious. Men are just built different than women. I don't understand. I don't understand it. Did you see they had the female? Well, it was a male, obviously, transgender for a female, and the figure skater. I can't remember what country.
She was falling and sliding into the wall.
It was like Chaz Michaels from what's this? Blades of Glory.
Blades of Glory.
Come on.
Oh,
it's
man.
It's almost like like I said, I hate the QAnon thing, but this goes back to that, where you're watching a movie to get everyone woken up. And I guess that's like the most hopeful outcome we could pray for at this point. But because, like, even like people that like are liberal, like my family's a little bit more to the left, I guess. I mean, my uncle was a Democratic mayor of a pretty decent sized town in Western Pennsylvania where I live. I mean, he's been retired for like 2 decades now, but they're not necessarily leftists, but they're like liberals, and they're even like see this stuff and they're like, what the hell? Like another uncle's like during COVID, he sees Dr. Rachel Levin, he's like that one gross woman, and I had to explain to him. I said, you know that's a dude, right? He was like, no. And I was like, yes, this is Dr. Rachel Levin. I go, but it gets better. The guy actually was a child psychologist, and then one day woke up and says, oh my God, I know I'm a child psychologist, but for the past 50 years, I had it wrong. I'm actually a woman.
Yep.
It's almost too funny for me. It's when you sit back and you think about it. But there's some people that literally spike the football and go, now that is progress right there. We are really, I just don't understand it, man.
It's sad. And they've made people so deathly afraid to speak up against it.
Well,
right?
I'm not, like I said, I don't care. I'll be ostracized.
Oh, I don't either. But they make the normal person afraid to speak up against it, whether it be on social media or certainly not at their job because they're afraid they'll be ostracized.
What it's going to take is a few people like the swimmer. They're like, I trained my whole life for this, and it was stolen from me. And then
I wish the girls wouldn't have just showed up. They should have. Nobody should have showed up for the meets.
That would have been watching that dude who's like 6'3", got an Adam's apple. I mean, geez, swing by himself would have been the best. That would have been the best right there.
Yep.
Hilarious.
Just
Watch him swim by himself. Stand on the podium by himself. South Park did an episode like the year before the pandemic about basically a macho man, Randy Savage, competing in the decathlon.
Yep, they called it.
I mean, which I always wondered about South Park, if they are controlled opposition or if they're Freemasons, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. They're very much like the guy who does The Simpsons. They're very much part of the group.
And that makes me sad because I really like them. And I always thought maybe, but they're from Denver, Colorado, that area. And it just sucks. You know, you look up at these people when you're a kid, you laugh at them your whole life, they entertain you, and you find out they're not, they might not, or they're not who you thought they were. I love Tom Hanks. Saving Private Ryan, all that thing. And then, honestly, even without if assuming he isn't even raping children or whatever he was doing, it's just I know he's just an actor.
Yep.
On the world stage.
Yeah, he was the first celebrity to I've got the COVID. He pushed the narrative.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right.
Yep.
And now the COVID thing, honestly, it makes you wonder. Now all of a sudden we're all blaming China now. Everyone hand in gloves blaming China, which makes me question it immediately. Makes me think, is this Ukraine biolabs thing maybe the right story? And how the hell did the virus get to Wuhan, China? And you got to question. If China was going to release this, like step one, you're going to release a pandemic on the world to try to take over. Step one would be to make sure you had the cure or the vaccine. China didn't, but you know who did? Big Pharma, Moderna, Pfizer, all these globalist companies somehow had the cure ready to go. And I don't even think this virus was meant to kill a lot of people. I just think it was meant to instill fear and get people under control.
Yeah, well,
you could argue if it worked or not.
They were hoping it would make people want the vaccine more, right?
Yes.
And it was, it could be Ukraine, but my argument was always Fort Detrick. Anybody can go to their Google machines, and if you look from July to October of 2019, there was a huge amount of people in a 60-mile radius of Fort Detrick, Maryland, who got terribly sick. By October 1st, 2019, they had more flu cases than the entire previous year. And I made you can go to my webpage, thefacthunter.com, and on there, it's called COVID Origins. And I have they tried to say it was a vaping illness, and then there was a bunch of retirement homes around Fort Detrick, and the newscaster in the area, she's like, the flu in July? And it's just that whole area was very sick. And then there was a soldier from, I think, Fort Story, Virginia, who apparently went to Fort Detrick before she went over to the World Military Games, which was held in Wuhan, China in October, I want to say 21st, 22nd of 2019. And that's how many people believe it was intentionally spread, because there was 160 countries represented there. And if you believe the story, the first case was in Seattle, and Seattle was the flight. That's where all the athletes flew out of, was Seattle. So
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
I think I remember hearing something about that, but you went into a little more detail than I knew. And that makes a lot of sense. And it got me thinking. You want to hear a crazy story? So, long story short, I never get sick. I could honestly remember getting sick one time in college where I was like out of commission for like 3 or 4 days. I never get sick. My dad really never gets sick either. And his dad, my grandfather was in Florida, never gets sick. Craziest thing ever. Well, for some reason, I think it was late August. I had just gotten back. We were in Denver for a buddy's bachelor party in 2019. I think late August, early September. And I had just gotten back from the Denver airport. I got really, really sick about 4 or 5 days after I got back. And I'm talking like really, really sick.
And when was this again? Sorry.
I think it was late August, early September of 2019.
Okay.
Now, it could be nothing related, nothing at all, but I never get sick, and I got extremely sick for 2 or 3 days, and I was fine. Honestly, it was like a giant thing just hit me, and then it lifted one day where I was sweating in bed, taking a shower, felt like a little bit better. I would honestly get in my bathtub and just get like on all fours, just let the water just go over me. That would make me feel a little bit better. So then I was scheduled to have a back surgery in about 3 months. I think it was right after Thanksgiving of that year. Well, I literally went in to get the back surgery. This is major surgery, like 4 hours. I got my L5, S1 fused together. Like I said, they went into my back and my stomach. I was, bedridden for like 2 weeks. And I go there. I'm all set to go to the surgery. They got me hooked up with the IV. The doctor all of a sudden called in. He woke up terribly sick. This is actually, it was right after Thanksgiving. So this would have been early December. I think it was December 4th or 5th day. And, of 2019, and the doctor was extremely sick and had to call if he couldn't do the surgery. So I went home and then had to reschedule the surgery for, I think it was like January 10th or 11th or something in 2020. But it was just weird. I talked to him, before the surgery when I actually had it. And I was like, yeah, I got sick. He goes, that was the worst sickness I ever had in my life, man. He was like, I was out of commission. I had to cancel like a week's worth of surgery because I actually know the doctor. The lady that does the scheduling for him is a good friend of a friend, like my cousin's friend, long story short. But so I've talked to the doctor. It's kind of like a personal. He gives me a little bit more time than other patients. Let's just say that. And he was honest with me. He's like, that's the sickest I've ever freaking been that I can remember. And it was for honestly almost a week. Now mine was like 2, 3, we'll say 3 days max. He was saying like 5, 6, 7 days. The timing, astronomical, the odds.
Yeah, that's 1 in a million.
And then you didn't know anything about COVID then. You know what I mean? Not. You didn't hear about COVID until I remember the first time I heard of it was January 1st. It was New Year's Eve, going into New Year's Day. I had just gotten home from my wife. She was my fiance, or actually she was my girlfriend at the time. We got engaged shortly after that. I was at her house, just a few people over for New Year's Eve. And we got home. I turned on Fox News because I still believe Fox News wasn't the same thing as CNN, but for conservatives. And I remember seeing the trucks going down the street, spraying stuff up in the air, the stuff. And I thought, why the hell are they disinfecting the air? That makes no sense. It's all, and you could believe whatever you want, whether they were actually really nervous about a pandemic, whether it was just to get, the media attention to that, to start the narrative. You could, however you want to play it. But they incepted that idea of the pandemic in my brain right there that day. So
that's interesting.
And now you have all these other weird stories that have come out since then. It's like as soon as like a big thing with COVID happens, or like a big discovery, like the vaccines don't work, or the UFOs start again. All of a sudden, they want to talk about UFOs.
Another distraction.
Yeah,
right?
Biden. Yeah, well, what was it? Biden. I can't remember. It was Biden got caught with Nord Stream or something else, and then we had a Chinese weather balloon that was actually could have been a UFO. It was a UFO.
These guys can spy on us through Zoom and half of our technology. Do you really think they're concerned about a weather balloon? Oh, that was such a diversion.
It might have worked in the 50s. It might have worked in the 50s at Roswell, or whatever, when it was probably a weather balloon. They said it was a UFO. They said it was a weather balloon. Yep. Come on, we are past that. We're supposed to have 30,000 satellites flying around at 17,000 miles an hour.
Is that, by the way, is that something you've looked into?
What's that?
The satellites.
Okay, so when I saw that Chinese weather balloon, I must have had like an epiphany because I thought it was a satellite at first. Honestly, I thought it was, when I first saw the picture, I thought it was a satellite going over like the moon. But here, that was a giant white balloon with it looked like a satellite attached to it. So are all these satellites connected to weather balloons?
Well,
It's possible. It's possible.
it's a funny thing because you know who is the number one consumer in the world of helium?
Who?
NASA.
Oh, go figure.
Number two was the Department of Defense. So,
No. My God. But let me guess. Number 3 is Party City or something.
yeah, Party City.
Yeah.
Satellites are us.
Let me ask you a question, George, because you have probably a lot more experience in the know more than me about these UFOs. Why are some of them triangular shaped that they're showing us?
Say that one more time.
Why are some of them like triangular shaped, almost like pyramids?
You know, that's a good question. This topic came up a couple conversations ago, and I don't remember why the actual point why we discussed it. It's interesting because pyramids are so prevalent, and when there's something that's with the Egyptian pyramids that they're not telling us as well, I believe. I know, if I remember correctly, it had something to do once again with the Germans and their technology, but I don't remember the specific conversation we had about that.
Another thing that makes me scratch my head is some of them emerge or go into the water. Why in the hell would they be doing that?
That doesn't make, I don't know, doesn't make any sense to me.
It makes you think, like, is this either I'm not buying into the heliocentric model where we're traveling at this fast and we're spinning around.
Right.
But what I could buy into, if the Earth is round, if it is a globe, it has to be like so much bigger than we're told. Like, honestly, the size of how the actual sun is, because maybe there are more lands. Maybe we are, like I said, in a giant Grand Canyon, for lack of a better term, surrounded by a giant ice wall, like Game of Thrones. Honestly, if you think about it, if you've ever seen like the show, and there's more lands or something that we have no idea or can't even imagine beyond that ice wall. Or there could be a firmament, or it could be a giant firmament above us, and there is everything could be true. I just know that there's no way we are traveling at whatever, how many hundreds of thousands of miles an hour through space, and for some reason all the stars are in the exact same location when I walk out my front door. I mean, come on.
Yeah, there's the famous map. I don't know who wrote it, but it's got, of course, the Pacific Ocean, the 7 continents. Then there's an ice wall, and then there's like 4 more continents out. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 continents, and it's kind of similar. There's a big one like North and South America. There's kind of one like Europe, and then there's kind of like a Philippines, a big chain of islands. Then there's another ice wall, and then there's like 4 or 5 more continents, and then kind of the firmament and those type of things. We don't know if is there more than one ice wall. We know there's an ice wall. I've seen pictures of an ice wall. I know there's a reason they called Operation High Jump because of the pictures of the ice walls. Is there a certain time of year where they can pass through these ice walls? Is there something to Admiral Byrd's story? Did he, sometimes when the media comes out, they kind of take the truth and they kind of tell us a little bit of truth, but a little bit of lies to steer us in the wrong direction.
Exactly. Yes.
Because didn't he talk about the Hollow Earth?
I think I mentioned, or did he? I kind of buy into that a little bit too. Like I said, I just know that Antarctica would solve everything if we could just see what's beyond that giant. It's a giant Himalayan mountain range, basically. No, there are no other continents like that's that big. It doesn't make logical sense from how Antarctica is just shaped and built and everything. But the Hollow Earth theory, that would be very interesting. That would mean that you could pass through the ice wall, or even underground or underwater somewhere. Maybe could be why these UFOs are going into the water. Maybe there's entrances there. You have the Epstein Island stuff where the submarine was going underground and stuff. Maybe there are tunnels and ways. Like what was the movie 50,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Could be something like that.
And people say all the time, why are we spending all this money to investigate, quote unquote, outer space when we have, the ice walls and under the water, right?
Yeah, can we do it in order, please? Can we maybe start with Antarctica and or the bottom of the ocean?
Right.
Give James Cameron a couple more submarines, please. Let him check it out.
Yeah, that was a lot of, Admiral Byrd, he was friends with the Ford family. They financed a lot of his expeditions, the Ford Motor Company. And then I always find it interesting, he died on Happy Freemason Day, 3/11/33.
Really?
At a pretty young age of 68, which 1968 was a big year. But it's interesting how everything happened. Operation High Jump, and then right about the same time was Operation Dominic and Fishbowl when they started launching rockets into the air. And that's another thing. It's reported when these rockets went off near the firmament, it could be seen in many places around the world because the reflection was going off of the firmament. It was lighting up the firmament.
Imagine if we had Twitter back then.
Oh, could you imagine?
That's why this whole Great Reset thing, I think they got behind somehow. I don't know how they're behind, and they need to get rid of all this stuff because people are starting to, get a little bit more onto the schemes here. It's taking a lot longer than it should.
Yep.
But people are asking questions now, and you have normal people. Honestly, I was a normie. Conspiracy / normie, I guess, all the way up in like 2018, 19. I guess I already went down the rabbit hole, like I said, once I had that back surgery, and it was just the stuff that I found out, the questions that could be that aren't answered. Completely blew my mind.
And that's one thing I think I may have failed to ask you that I usually ask my guests is, what was the one rabbit hole that you went down and that really changed your life? You're like, oh my gosh.
Ooh. Honestly, one of my friends, this is probably one of the first, I think one of your other guests mentioned it. It was that Fall of the Cabal series.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, whenever you have like a red pill moment, like I remembered everything they said. Like it was like I already knew it. It was just, I'm seeing it with different eyes now. Like the immigrants from the border when Trump was president that had the wristbands. I remember seeing them wristbands and thinking something like that then, like maybe they were, but then it says that, and it gives me a whole new thinking. Yeah. And then all this other stuff. And then you just start going down rabbit hole. And I'm sure some of that stuff, maybe in that Fall Cabal thing, are false, or maybe even controlled opposition. But I'm willing to take in as much information as I can, because even the people that are controlled opposition are going to lead you a little bit in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Alex Jones has, I believe, 100% controlled opposition.
Mossad.
He's literally 1 block away from Stratfor, which is one of Israel's biggest intelligence agencies. And I think there was a reason he was brought in to do the Sandy Hook thing, because people were, I better watch my step. But, I think it was a little unusual that he got a judgment of $1 billion in a country where we're supposed to have free speech. Well, no matter how terrible it might have come off to some people. As an American,
I'll do the same thing with Uvalde, and my argument will be, I might hurt some parents' feelings, but they don't have answers, and their kids probably hurt pretty bad when they were shot, and the police did nothing. So we can get to the answers about that first.
Yep.
I'm sorry. The whole schlick that they have is we're gonna introduce a problem so we can get this. We can give you the solution that we've had planned out for probably decades.
Yep.
And gun violence. I mean, what kind of, never in my mind before, like the 60s and 70s, we've had shootings in this country. They just weren't mass shootings. They were like vendetta shootings. Yep. Like someone cheats on your wife or something, or sleeps with your wife, and you go shoot them at work. You don't shoot everyone. Then all of a sudden you had these people. Remember the term going postal? Oh
yeah, the post. Yeah, in the 80s and 90s. And then the recruiters were killing themselves. That kind of drew a little bit of thing. But yeah, the post officers in the 80s and 90s going postal. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you sit here and you talk about this long enough, like we're doing. I mean, we're two people that are open, whatever. So it's easier. But the more and more you probe this, it just opens more doors. Hey, this doesn't make any sense. Yeah, remember going postal? Isn't the post office a federal agency? Oh, yeah. Yep. I wonder if some of those people were Freemasons, or if they even really died, or really did, maybe shot up a place, but on and on and on.
Or they were under some MK Ultra type of influence, right?
Yes, and I honestly, it took me a long time to believe MK Ultra. I always just thought it was a conspiracy theory until like 2020, because I didn't see how you could just flip a switch and have someone just go crazy and kill someone. But there's clearly technology that they have and ways to control the brain that they know that we are not privy to and we probably can't even understand. So it's MK Ultra could be MK Ultra. It can all just be actors that literally, like a circus, fly around on the same jet and are the same crisis actors. I had a friend that was at the Boston Massacre.
Oh.
Okay, he was there in the crowd, and he was at a part of the crowd where no bombs went off. They went off like it was behind the finish line, I think, and it was like maybe a month after he moved to Boston. And he swears that it really happened. And I'm not saying it didn't happen, but you see some of the crisis actors, and then of course Mark Wahlberg gets the movie about it, and then what's the lady's name who was the doctor on the scene there, and was like CNN's like head COVID personality, Dr. Leo Quinn.
That's right.
And I try to explain. I actually talked to him about this today about like the Russia stuff. He lives in Boston. I don't see or talk to him as much anymore unless it's like fantasy football season because you're my fantasy football league. But I mean, he is convinced that it really happened, which I'm not saying bombs didn't go off. I'm not saying maybe people got hurt, but who did it? Was it really these two brothers, or was it our government? And were they patsies?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know when the date was when they really started censoring videos on YouTube, but there's a lot of videos with people who look very much like government agents with the crew cuts and the pants and the boots, walking around with black bags that day. I'd have to find
watch the Kennedy assassination tapes. Now, just let me paint like a picture for you. Imagine you're a government, not necessarily a spy, just an agent of the government, and you get a call saying, "Hey, go down to Texas, this place in Texas. You're going to be here. Record the president." And then another person gets a call. "I need you to stand here in the grassy knoll and watch this person." You'd all be sitting there on the same grassy knoll saying, "Wait, I know that guy. That guy's a spy." And like it's like the Spider-Man meme. Then like another guy might think, "Hey, I know that guy. He's an assassin. I know that guy. He worked for the CIA." And all of a sudden you hear gunshots and the president's dead. Are you the patsy? You don't know. Is that what happened with Lee Harvey Oswald? Probably.
Oh, 100%.
So,
There's pictures of him on the right by the door of the book depository as Kennedy was going by. He was very much, and even the video you see, he's like, "I have no idea what's going on. They haven't even told me." And of course, Jack Ruby, whose real name was Reuben Stein, just happened to kill him. The most hated man in America had such little security. I mean, the whole thing.
They shot him in the basement of a police station. Come on. No one said, "Hey, wait a minute, that's weird." I blame I guess it'd be my grandfather's generation. No one said, "Hey, wait a minute, that doesn't make a sense." A mob boss shot him in the basement of a police station because he was mad that Jackie Kennedy would have to sit through a trial with this guy. That's weird. And then you do the magic. You got to blame it on the generation that was there because they didn't ask questions.
Yeah, and I think that was I think it goes all the way back to War of the Worlds in 1938, 39, whenever that was, when they realized, man, these people will fall for anything. But then, when they killed a sitting president of the United States, and even there's a picture of LBJ on Air Force One winking at the one of his buddies as he's being sworn in, and nobody,
a cop with the same jawline as JFK, same jawline and hairline,
and I bet you if you pull out a history book from today, it's still going to say Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman, and that's what they're teaching our children today.
And you know what? They pretty much came out and admitted the CIA did this.
Yeah.
What was it, 60-something? And no one cares. It's like, well, we kind of knew that. Well, okay. The CIA killed a president. What are we going to disband the CIA finally? Are we going to look at no, just business as usual? Hey, the football season's coming up in a week.
Yep. And when my grandchildren are old, they'll come out and tell the truth about 9/11. Oh, it turns out it wasn't 19 Arabs. It was the Mossad.
Can you believe that? I mean, I've been on a plane before. 9/11 is one that I waffled back and forth on until like 2014, we'll say. And I really thought like, hey, maybe it doesn't melt steel. Jet fuel doesn't melt steel at that temperature. Maybe it could like make it like compromise the integrity of the steel and make it bend. But then, if that does make sense, how do they fall? A building should pancake like that. Instead, it falls at the same speed of gravity. Makes no sense at all.
Yeah, it should have started to fall and maybe careen off to the side. I was, before I reclassed, I was a combat engineer. We used C4, det cord, and all kinds of stuff. It didn't make any sense. And then, when you finally get the time to look at it, you're like, yeah, there's no way that this happened. And then you look back in it's either late 40s or early 50s. There was a B-25 that flew into a office building in New York City, and on a Saturday, and by Monday they were open again. It's just
yes. And that was the military plane. It was probably a little bit, maybe smaller than a jet with obviously no jet fuel.
Yeah, but you would think it would be heavier than anything that's made today, right?
Exactly. And it's not like it did like 50% of the damage or like 40%.
Yeah, it killed one person. I think a janitor that was working that day or something.
Yeah. It makes zero. Look at the bombing of like any city during like war. When the buildings fall, they don't fall straight down.
No, you see half buildings.
And if they do collapse like that, they pancake.
Yep.
Because you have something supporting them, somewhere. And those buildings were made of freaking steel.
Yeah, they were made to withstand.
Flap when you're going 40,000 feet. The wings are just flapping around.
Yep.
That thing would have bounced off that and killed anyone on the ground.
Oh yeah, it would have just folded up like how you take the old school aluminum soda cans and just kind of crush it.
Exactly. It might have maybe killed a few people on that floor.
Oh, for sure.
Do not tell me.
It would have done some damage.
Do not tell me that hitting one building at whatever it was, the 100th floor, we'll say, and another building a little bit lower, caused both the most powerful, strongest buildings at the time probably to crumble, and then Building 7 fell. First of all, I think it was a British news agency said, "Oh yeah, Building 7 has also fallen," and she was reporting, and Building 7 standing right behind them. It's like January 6th you talk about. Officer Sick, he's supposedly dead. They announced him dead on CNN, but at the same time, he's on video running around the Capitol very vigorously.
Yep. He was perfectly fine. Nobody hit him over the head with it. What did they say? A fire extinguisher?
Bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher. Then they said bear mace. He had a heart attack, or he had a stroke after he got sprayed in the face with bear mace.
Come on, man.
Does that make any sense to you?
No, of course not.
It sounds like, honestly, and we can bring this back to George Floyd, where they maybe hit him with something in the neck, injected something in his neck, and just killed him. You had 4 January 6th Capitol police officers commit suicide within like a week or two after.
Yeah, and then you look at things like the Anthony Weiner laptop. 9 of the 12 police officers that saw that laptop committed suicide. 75% suicide rate.
We're getting to the Clinton body count.
Yeah, we're getting around there, and we need to get together again for sure. And maybe on the other podcast we can delve into some of these 9/11s and type of things. We're closing in on 2 hours. There was something else I wanted to mention on the. Let me pull this back up. Age of Discovery, ice wall. Did you talk everything you wanted to mention about the ice wall? Any other thoughts on that?
I was hoping you could educate me a little bit on the ice wall and the firmament. I believe were the two things that I really don't understand. I'm evolving to them. The firmament makes a lot more sense the more and more you think about everything, like the satellites, the weather balloons, how they take off and make a hard right turn. So I was looking for more you to mention, anything you have on the firmament. The moon landing. Here's a good thing I want to mention about the ice wall. And I don't think this is kind of far-fetched, but if they didn't film the moon landing in a movie theater, whatever it was, airline hangar, it's possible, I guess, they could have filmed that somewhere like along the ice wall or something, but none of that makes sense. I mean, the way they're jumping around, like the first thing they should have did in whatever it was, 1/8 the gravity, 1/6 the gravity.
Yeah, 1/6.
Was jump as high as they can. Jump as high as you can in the air. Show us something.
And
the rover, not the rover, the dune buggy they brought.
Right.
Shouldn't it hit like a little bump and go like 5 feet in the air and then land back down?
Yep. It's pretty obvious to me. I don't remember who it was. It might have been Bart Sibrel, but all they did was slow the film down. He sped it up to he just sped it up, and you can tell it's just somebody running along, and all they did was slow the film down to make it look like they were moving slower because of gravity. But you're right. Why didn't it affect their height, only the speed? That makes no sense whatsoever.
These are super athletes, these astronauts. Okay?
Oh, yeah. They should have been able to jump 20 feet into the air.
Athletes. They should look like professional world-class gymnasts on that lunar surface.
Yep. The big takeaway for me, again, I'll show people this all the time, that the press conference when they quote unquote came back from the moon, man, I would have been smiles and signing all my Gatorade contracts, and I want to be like George. I'd have my own sneakers to the moon. Get your new moon zooms from Nike. I would be endorsing everything. These guys, poor Neil Armstrong, he drank himself to death because obviously all the guilt he had on his shoulders. It's, man,
so you had that Bart guy. I love that interview you did with Bart, and that I think you guys go back and forth with, how did Neil Armstrong and Buzz, how did they find out, So I guess you got to picture it this way. Like, it could be even like the day or two before they leave to supposedly go to the moon, and then someone comes up to them and goes, okay, so listen, guys, here's the truth. You're not exactly going to go to the moon.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to do, and you could do it, and you could be famous, and you could play along with this whole movie we got going on here, or you could not do it and wind up like that last guy that hung a lemon from the ship.
Yep.
And you could burn to death and die a terrible, terrible death. I mean, what would you do? Do I think because that Bart guy said he was a coward. And honestly, after about 50 years, I think I would finally spill it. It's easy for me to say. And now that I have like a 6-month-old son, I could see how like you would keep the secret going. But
yeah.
I feel like at some point I would have to say, listen, I'm going to the news station. I'm not telling anyone. And I'm just spilling my guts. I don't care anymore. I don't care. I'm not living this lie anymore. It's affecting too many people, and people are suffering here because of this big lie.
Yep.
It's just that's the way I feel. It's easy to say it. I guess we'll never know. Thank God we're not in this situation. But I like to think, I would speak up. I would say something.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder. Have you seen the movie Capricorn 1?
What year was that from?
Oh, 78.
No, I've not seen Capricorn 1.
Yeah, these guys, O.J. Simpson was actually he was one of the 3 astronauts. These guys were actually, and it's funny because the president didn't show up in that movie either. Nixon didn't show up for the launch either. But these guys were literally in the hatch. The rockets go off, and a guy comes in. He's like, "Gentlemen, come with me." And they're like, "We're about to take off," and they're whisked away through an underground tunnel, and they fly to somewhere and. They're told the whole story, and it's all a lie, and it's for the country. And this, I just wonder if that was between that and the movie The Shining. I really believe was their way of kind of telling us it was all a big lie.
Wait, so they made a movie called Capricorn 1 about it being fake.
Yeah, the only difference was they were going to the moon. That was the only.
They haven't made a movie about Apollo 11. We get Apollo 13, the one they F up, the one they completely F up. We get that movie.
Yep. I'm trying to remember. Oh, there's no Neil Armstrong movie, is there? There's no movie about them going to the moon. Man's greatest accomplishment.
Makes zero sense at all. Makes no sense. But people forget we landed on the moon. Now, I mean, talk to someone that's born after 2000. Yeah, we landed on the moon, whatever, there's nothing there. I mean, Jim Carrey did a movie, Dumb and Dumber, where they come out, hey, we landed on the moon. And he's another guy that, like, honestly, I loved Jim Carrey when he was a kid, but like now he is on like certain shows, in like the late 90s, saying, we didn't go to the moon, get out of here. They try to like shut him up. It makes you think, like, are these people really MK Ultra, like you said, and just all of a sudden break loose like Kanye for a little bit and have some moments of clarity?
Yeah. What was the movie he was in where his little boat kind of went into the wall?
Truman Show. Honestly, I need to watch that movie again because I watched that. Probably last time I watched that was at high school or college. And boy, or if we could all be living in the Truman Show, man.
Yep.
It could be like Clash of the Titans, where you got Liam Neeson up there watching down on all of us from the through the firmament, something like that. Who the hell knows, man? Who the hell knows? But we'll never know. We could easily get a giant So, or you have the ISS. Just have someone with an iPhone take a picture. Don't edit the pictures. Show us.
Yep.
Show us. They use a fisheye lens, and I never believed that, like, until maybe like a year or two ago. But then you have someone, I think it's a propane tank, and they got a fisheye lens on it. They're spinning around. It doesn't look like, our planet, but it looks like a planet like ours, and it's a freaking propane tank.
Yep.
They just use a fisheye lens. Oh, man. But
The world
it's like,
is a
okay, so
stage.
the last thing here, there's a reason why they'll never admit it. Even if they really wanted to. It's think of the movie. Is it? Let me see here. Is it Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yep.
My phone here. Yes, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, what happened in that movie? Everyone remembers the faces melting off, but you forget at the very end of the movie, it's what happened to the Ark. Oh, it's being examined by top men.
Yep.
Indy questions it again. It's like, no, it's top men. Like, AKA, shut up.
Yep.
Well, for lack of a better term, the West got the Ark. What did they do with it? They have a big parade. They invite people to see it. No, they hid it. Just like they hide everything. Why? Because, like I said in the very beginning, it would ruin the entire narrative of planet Earth for the last 2,000 years. You're admitting there's a God.
Yeah.
Either way, they don't want to deal with either society going crazy, or they want to keep it forever just because it went against, I guess, science. And I don't know, science is a cult. Science is the devil at this point. I mean, I don't know. But that movie right there explains it perfectly. Like, even if there is this big discovery that proves something that, we've always wondered,
they'll stick it in the warehouse.
Secret. Yep. And don't ask any questions.
That's right. And kind of just to add on to that, I do think that was one of the actual reasons why we went into Iraq, was because there was some very historical important things that they wanted to snatch up that they couldn't get in 91s. They went back in. Obviously, oil, of course, big deal. Our value is based on a petrodollar, but I think if you remember, they made the movie about World War II, about those guys going around and collecting art and trying to get all that stuff back to the States. So I really believe our venture to Iraq had a lot to do with the historical and maybe religious
Nimrod?
items there.
Was it Nimrod?
Yeah, Nimrod. Yep. They said they
that's
found
crazy
it.
Because my co-host, now if I say flat Earth, whatever, and I think he'd immediately get turned off, but he had mentioned something about that like a month ago. Hey, I've been doing a couple conspiracy. He goes, do you know that maybe in Iraq they found Nimrod's body or something? And I'm like, oh, go on, Mark. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, Dustin Nemos was big on Nimrod. He thinks he's the Antichrist via his DNA and stuff.
But you had some really good guests. That some of them takes, like I said, even if they're not correct, it opens up your eyes to ask more questions, which is exactly what we need in today's society.
Yep. And listen, if you believe they faked the moon landing, then you should certainly question everything that this corrupt government tells you. Everything should be in play.
And I do it. Like I said, I love. My wife wishes, I was back to 2019, Joe. I'm sure, but once you're awake, you can't. You're not going back.
Yeah, you can't, man.
You're really, really awake. No,
just like the dude said in the movie, once you take the pill, there's no going back. And boy, there's certainly a lot of truth to that.
Yes.
Well, Joe, man, it's been a blast. We need to definitely do this again.
And I need to have you on at some point on our podcast.
Yeah, sure. Just
conspiracy.
You have my email. Reach out and we'll set something up. I'd love to join you and meet your co-host.
Yes, and guide him to Flat Earth. But if anyone out there is wants to check out our podcast, is called Thinking Logically. One thing I could promise you is you will laugh. We have a lot of funny cold openings. If you're a fan of Chris Berman, we have what we did for the football season. It was called The Fastest 2 Minutes in Politics. I think starting at like episode 17, we did that. But yeah, starting like episode like 16, 17, I think we started doing these really funny cold opens. And if any of your listeners just want to check them out, listen to the first minute and a half of the episode. I guarantee you'll laugh. And then we do have some really good takes. Like I said, if you're interested in the normie stuff that's going on in the world, I'm trying to like baby walk some of these people into the reality, if you know what I mean, George.
Absolutely.
That's really happening.
Yeah, I did the same thing several years ago. We started just with some, basic things, worked our way to Kennedy and through the, moon landing, 9/11. And now you get into some deeper things. And that's kind of the way you got to do it. If you open up your first conspiracy podcast with Flat Earth, nobody's going to click on it, or very few people. Actually, I'm still shocked.
And it was ruined because of controlled opposition. Controlled opposition, the Flat Earth Society ruined that.
100%. And that's Barack Obama, when he made that speech in, I think, 2014, he didn't just say flat earthers. He specifically mentioned the Flat Earth Society, so people would Google that and see a ridiculous presentation of what they want you to think flat Earth is versus us, on a flat Earth with the ice wall completely surrounding us, because obviously the further you get away from the sun, the colder it's going to be. And that's why we have ice walls.
Except in the North Pole. I mean, there's some parts like Barrow, Alaska that are literally like right where the middle edges of Antarctica would be that get like 60 degrees.
Well, that's the biggest thing that you should tell people when they question flat Earth. If the North Pole and the South Pole are kind of the same poles, why is the South Pole so much colder than the North Pole?
It's because it's higher elevation, and then there's penguins, and it's windy.
Yeah, except Antarctica has one of the highest points in the world. It is. If you Google the highest point in the world, it'll tell you the highest continent is Antarctica. And if you believe the poles, they should have a relatively close. I think the warmest Antarctica ever gets on the best day is -8, and North Pole gets some plus temperatures. It's not even close. So that's another tool in the toolbox to kind of discuss to people. Look at the temperatures. It's not close. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about the same day. You can obviously it's quote unquote southern hemisphere. So even if you argue that, there's such just a difference in temperatures. It's not close. Excuse me. So there you go.
You're absolutely right. Like I said, but
go ahead.
No, I said but again, you started talking about people about just anything flat Earth or questioning anything Antarctica. They just don't want to hear it. They're not interested. I would say a good part of the population. There's some that are slowly waking up now, but you see, we're going into World War III probably in the next couple of weeks here. So everyone's going to be focused on that now.
Yeah, it's the latest thing, just like the movie Squirrel. We're diverted at the next thing, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's sad, but like it's up to people like us now who are doing it. I'm doing this because I love to do it, man. I mean, I'd go crazy if I didn't. Spread truth. That's all you can do. Maybe in 20, 30 years, we'll be recognized for it.
There you go.
If not, at least I tried. I could go to my maker and say, hey, at least I tried.
That's all we can do. And again, it's up to the individual. You can lead a horse to water. And everything we say, we believe, we have conviction in. Obviously, a lot of it is conjecture and just critical thinking. But the one thing we do know, what they tell us is lies. And I think our version of truth and the government's version of the truth, we're more. I mean, we're batting 1,000 since 2020, right?
Yes, exactly. And another thing too, just remember for others, when it does happen, when we do catch them in a lie, just remember they're not just like your kids, man. They're not going to say, they're not going to throw up their hands and you got us. We'll tell you all the truth now. They're just going to tell another lie and another lie and another lie.
That's right.
So,
and you're the Thinking Logically podcast. You're on Apple and Spotify, correct?
Yes, my co-host handles the Spotify version of it, so it's under I think his name, Mark, and then my name and my Joe Corsai. I mean, I like to stay away from my last name because for some reason, like I said, you talk about Q and on a Q. My last name is on that Q board. There's some dude named Jerome Corsi who I have no relation to at all. So I just try to just stay away from stuff like that because the next thing you know, I'll be accused of being a deep state actor. So,
well, for the listeners, we'll put your podcast link in the show description, so you don't have to go. For those listening, you don't have to go searching for it. You can just go to the show description and then click on the link. We'll have one for Apple, one for Spotify, and you guys can subscribe and check out his latest podcast.
Thank you, George. I'll have to have you on, like I said, maybe in like a week or two to discuss. I don't know if you could talk about flat Earth, but definitely the moon landing. We could dive into that really hard. So.
Yeah, send me an email. I'll look at my schedule and we'll see what we can do. And I will give you the floor to close out with the listeners.
Guys, listen, we live in very, 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 very difficult times right now. Just always continue to question everything and think logically. That's all you can do right now. You might not be able to change someone else's mind, but if you keep an open mind, then that's all that matters. So That's all I got, George.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
And that's Joe from the Thinking Logically podcast. Make sure you check out the show description and check him out. Thanks again. And everybody keep your head on a swivel. And until next time, we will see you.
Hey, hon, we really need new phones.
T-Mobile will cover the cost of 4 amazing new iPhone 15s, and each line is only $25 a month.
New iPhone 15s? Best new year ever.
Get 4 iPhone 15s on us with eligible trade-in when you switch to T-Mobile.
Minimum of 4 lines for $25 per line per month with autopay discount using debit or bank account. $5 more per line without autopay, plus taxes and fees. Phone fee at 24 monthly bill credits for well-qualified customers. Contact us before canceling account to continue bill credits or credit stop and balance on required finance agreement due. $35 per line connection charge applies. See T-Mobile.com.
T-Mobile has invested billions to light up America's largest 5G network, from big cities to small towns, including right here in yours. And great coverage is just the beginning. Right now, families and small businesses can save up to 20% versus AT&T and Verizon when they switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today.
Plan savings with 2 to 3 lines of T-Mobile Essentials versus comparable available plans. Plan features and taxes and fees may vary.